this is a great book, and if you haven't read it, if you haven't had a chance to look at it yet, do I think buy it and do have a read of it, because there are some fascinating lessons here for British politics.
About a year ago, I thought that what we need is a new disruptive centre party, and to think about how it might be successful. So what Zoe and I did was something which was totally unheard of in British politics, and it's perhaps because I'm an outsider I could think of such a radical idea. What we did is we looked at other countries and to see if we could learn any lessons from these jolly foreigners. And what we see in these other countries is the collapse of the centre-left and centre-right party who've dominated the political landscape since World War II. And what we're seeing is the emergence of, getting back to my systems thinking, we're seeing the emergence of a new fitness landscape where traditional parties are outcompeted by disruptive new entrants, new parties, who are better able to navigate the new social, economic and technological landscape, which is modern political society.
Because really the book is a sort of a how-to guide. We've looked at 4 particular political parties across Europe and in North America, and we've sort of thought, what are their common characteristics, how have they been successful, and could we replicate that in the UK? They have presented themselves as these new or insurgent parties against the status quo. They are against the elite. They are against the situation that caused the 2008 financial crisis, which they've positioned themselves as reacting against and reacting in. They want to spin everything off into a new direction.
I think the British people knew for a long time that what was going on in British politics was unhealthy both on the outside and on the inside.
Change UK launched with a bang, but that has become something of a damp squib. Rather than offering change, Anna Soubry declared her undying love for the austerity policies of George Osborne.
Specifically, this elite issue, they say that they represent the people, and they're going to give the people a voice.
If you want to be a new thing from the people, you've actually got to listen to the people. And some of the things they're going to tell us, we're not going to necessarily agree with, but we cannot ignore it. So many people in our country are afraid about law and order. So many of them are afraid about immigration. We need to come up with policies that satisfy their fear and help allay them. We cannot ignore them and call them things, that's been said.
The second thing is they have a very savvy use of modern technology. They are really hip to the social media. The membership has a say in the policies. This is a different range. The different parties do this slightly differently. But for example, 5 Star has a system where people can log in to a platform online and suggest policies. Whereas other parties like En Marche and Podemos have meetings like this one where people turn up and they debate and discuss things and they form policies.
And what United for Change is trying to do is talk to British people up and down this country. God knows, if there was air miles for train rides, I'd be pretty wealthy in those points, because we are getting around this country talking to people. And what we're basically saying is, look, hi, I run a business, hi, I run a hospital, hi, I run a school. We're all really fed up. Are you fed up? How is this malaise in our politics? And it's not just since Brexit. There's been nothing really. If you look at the problems with inequality left behind communities, some of the law and order issues, it's been going on for 10, 20 years.
One big thing is that the leader is very, very important. The leader is often outside of the political scene.
Farage has actually offered a vision for Britain, even if it's one we don't like and we reject absolutely. He's pumped out his seductively simple messages, whilst the progressive centre has been making the cardinal error of playing the man rather than the ball.
When I think of, we were talking before about who the leader has to be in the character, so people, original donors and our group were all pushing on me, it's got to be someone famous or a politician. And I say, maybe it will be, because we're going to have an open primary if we get to that point, but I hope it's a head teacher, someone we don't know. A brilliant head teacher in a deprived area doing something wonderful, or someone who runs a health trust, who spent 20 years serving the public, never wanted to be in politics, but had a real belief that the country's not being run well, and has proved themselves in their own field.
For quite a few of these parties, there needs to be more openness. There needs to be the more traditional hierarchy that you sometimes have in a party that leads to understanding how the party makes decisions, or so the leader can be scrutinised.
No, nobody wants to be an MP under Nigel Farage's leadership. I mean, I just cannot imagine why anybody would do that, because you would have no say in the direction of the party, you would always be squashed down. It would be a problem. So
The final point that I'm going to make is the question about whether or not this can be done in the UK.
the electoral system is a constraint, but in response to your first question, it clearly isn't, the be-all and end-all. I mean, we have historic examples of parties that have managed to break through under first past the post. The SDP Liberal Alliance is one, although it never really made it beyond about 50-odd seats, it still clearly functioned as a kingmaker in 2010, and an important sort of source of concern for the main parties, Labour in the 1980s, helping to bring Labour back into the centre, and the Conservatives to some extent, I think, were responding to Liberal Democrat success when they elected David Cameron and he undertook the kind of modernisation that he undertook. So we have the Liberal Democrat example, and we also, of course, remember, if we go back further, we have the Labour Party, which after all broke through a two-party system that had existed for quite some time, and replaced the Liberals within a couple of decades, really. Almost driving that party into the wilderness. So although the electoral system is clearly a barrier, it's not an insuperable barrier, I would say that. So turning to the Conservative Party then, I mean, it would be, I think, difficult even to point to the kind of turmoil the Conservative Party went through in the 1920s when it was rowing about free trade versus protectionism, and there were big problems then. It would be difficult even to say that they were as serious as the problems that the Conservative Party has now. What seems to have happened is that Theresa May made a very firm decision, maybe under Nick Timothy's guidance, after the referendum, that she was going to position the Conservative Party towards the populist radical right. In other words, towards the kind of space that UKIP had occupied, partly in order actually to finally do for UKIP. And we all thought that strategy was sensible, that it would work, that when she called the 2017 election, she would hoover up UKIP votes, she would ride that to a majority. It didn't quite work out like that for her, although there was a point to it, and you could see the logic to it in some ways. The problem was always going to be she was going to burn off more liberal Conservative votes, and of course she did that, and that was why partly she didn't win that election, and also it was why she didn't win Canterbury, for example, and she didn't win Kensington, etc., etc. But it wasn't a strategy without logic. However, what's happened since, of course, is because she's failed to deliver Brexit, that strategy is in tatters completely, because she now has to face the fact that not UKIP, but the Brexit Party is fulfilling that same threat to the Conservatives on the radical right flank that they had to face throughout the 2000s from UKIP. So that strategy has gone very badly wrong. So that leaves the Conservatives now with two alternatives. Either it just goes further and tries to ape the Brexit Party, ape UKIP, and move further to the populist radical right, or it has a very, very big rethink and thinks to itself, well, actually, in the long term, that is not a sensible strategy. They are in a country which is becoming progressively, even though it's sometimes hard to notice that, particularly if you read some of the newspapers, progressively more tolerant, progressively more multicultural, progressively more kind of outward looking. And so in the long term, it doesn't seem to me that is a sensible strategy. When it comes to new parties, what's the future? Do the Conservative Party have to melt down? I think was your question for the party system to break up. Well, I'm not sure that they have to melt down. I do take kind of these ideas of the Conservative Party splitting with a big pinch of salt, actually. Coming back to the electoral system, I still think the logic of the electoral system for the Conservative Party is hang together or will be hanged separately, right? So, I mean, it doesn't really make any sense, I think, for a bunch of Conservatives to split off and form a new party, nor do I think, at the moment anyway, there are many Conservative MPs tempted to jump ship and join Nigel Farage's party,
Joe's absolutely right. Labour should be 20 points ahead in the opinion polls, given that we're up against the most incompetent and divided government in living memory. But communitarians hate our identity politics. They think we're too weak on national security, and that we send mixed messages on immigration, and that we are the London liberal globalist Labour Party. Until we show that we have more in common with Mansfield than with Maduro, it is hard to see how we can re-engage with our communitarian heartlands and defeat populism. The space in British politics is not for a liberal, uber-cosmopolitan party. Those voters already have representation. The space is for a party with a radical Keynesian economic policy, which understands the need to manage migration, which is patriotic to its core, as well as internationalist, but never globalist, and which is strong on national security. That's the real centre ground of British politics. And the fact is that these have always been the values at the heart of every successful Labour opposition and successful Labour government.
United for Change is really here to try and be that vehicle for people who don't believe politics can change but really want it to change. It's about creating a movement that can convince people that change can happen, but it's got to start with them caring. It's got to start with lots of people who are tired of politics and want nothing to do with it getting involved. People like you probably. The people who said, you know, oh God, that's crazy. The most common conversation I have is say to people I meet, brilliant people in the field, great people in all the various areas of our life, and saying, why aren't you an MP? You're so passionate and you've proved yourself so well in the military, in social care, and running education. And they'll go, oh, you're crazy. I mean, I'll do things to help change. I'll happily go to meetings and do communal work and good deeds, but get involved with politics, what an ugly, crazy thing to be involved in. And that's the problem. We need to create an appetizing politics which people want to come into, where they feel they can come and serve their country as an act of patriotism, not as an act of 40-year career. So I guess in conclusion, I can say, I hope it is possible to change. I have no idea if we can be part of that or help that happen. If we can, I'll be thrilled. We're also supporting lots of other groups that are doing it in their own way. We're by no means a tribe that has to be us. It doesn't have to be us, but it does have to happen.